Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this episode, we're gonna go back to a technique that I normally use to make trees. Now I made a video about this a little while back, and I got a lot of comments talking about how to make the actual leaves on the tree and how to actually finish it. And so I decided to make a whole tutorial about how to start from zero to have something like this, all mostly in Blender and a little bit of Photoshop work. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so let's start this process. We're gonna start it in Blender here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this just so I can make it to scale, the tree that we are going to be pretty much building here. And what I want to do is, and again, this beginner, this first part is pretty much the same as the old video that I have, but I want to go through the whole process, and we're going to add a little bit more of a steps into here. So I'm going to start with a cube. Now, again, this won't be a Blender specifically, like going through the basics. So I'm gonna go through some of this stuff a little, assuming that you guys understand how to create a cube and merging and duplicating and all that stuff. So I'm gonna go into edit mode, and I'm gonna select all my vertices and merge them to center. So I only have one vertex. I'm gonna extrude that pressing E. And so now I have an edge and two vertices. And for this, I'm going to add two modifiers. One of them is going to be skin, and then the other one is going to be subdivision surface. Now that I have this, I can go back into edit mode, turn on my X-ray, and I can really start sculpting, not really sculpting, but creating the shape of my tree, right? So I'm mostly just sculpting out. And I can select other vertices and sculpt from there, right? Now, the problem that we have here is everything sort of looks the same in terms of the thickness. And so in order to, a way to fix that is that if I select a vertex, let's say I select these two, I can press Control A, and then now I can drag here and make that either thick or thicker or thinner. And so I'm gonna play with the thickness of some of these places here. And again, I'm gonna keep extruding and moving. And one of the tricks for this is that you have to constantly rotate the camera, so the branches that you create don't sort of like get created on the same plane. And so you constantly have to sort of like rotate the camera so you can have a little bit of a variation with that as well. And so I'm gonna continue here, maybe grab a couple of this here. The other thing that you can do is that is if I have, let's say, this branch here, I can select these two vertices, right click subdivide, and that will create a new vertex here. And so I'm sort of going around and playing with this a little bit. The other thing that you could do is that you can turn on proportional editing, and then use that to have a little bit more control of the major shapes of the tree here. Maybe something like that. Control A. Right. The other actual thing that you can do is that I can actually select a couple of these vertices. Let's say this. I can duplicate this or Shift D. As you can see, I don't get the same effect, but I'm gonna turn this off, and I'm gonna sort of grab these and sort of rotate them. You can scale them a bit, maybe move them here. And so now I can actually select these two vertices, press F to join them, and now I get a new branch that way. So as you can see, it's pretty powerful very quickly to sort of like set up the main sort of some sort of shape of the actual tree. I'm gonna add, just for placing purposes, a ground level here. That way I can actually move this in a way that it works. Okay, and again, you can spend as much time as you want. You can create as many versions of this as you want, but this will be sort of like the first step. Now, in reality, this is still a curve, or edges and vertices, right? There's really no polys here. This is just a representation of the modifiers. And let's say, for example, that you wanted to add more detail to this. And let's say that you want to do it sort of like in a sculpting way, right? So you will have to apply all this to make this a actual polygons, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on subdivision one more step just so we have a little bit more in here. And then shade smooth is not going to work because we don't have actual polys at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to apply both modifiers. So now I don't have a modifiers, and now if I go into edit mode, now I have actual polys that I can actually work with. So shade smooth that, and now we have this. But let's say, for example, you want to add a little bit more detail, take it a little bit step further, and so I'm gonna go into sculpt mode, and I'm not gonna go too much into the actual details of all the stuff in sculpt mode, but I'm gonna turn on, let's turn on Dino Topo. Let's have this on 5 here. And now I can actually add a little bit more of texture here. I'm mostly going to do it on the trunk here. I'm just going around. I'm just using the draw brush, which is your normal brush, but as you can see, I can really add, especially for something like this, quite a bit of detail and deformation as well. I sort of want to go through the whole process here. Now I have Dino Topo on relative detail on 5, so that means that the closer I get, the more detail I'm gonna be able to add. As you can see, if I get really close, I can add more detail, but I don't want to add too much. I just want to be able to get the general sort of shape to this. And mostly I just want to break with the cylindrical sort of form, like the perfect cylindrical form that I get from the previous method here. Okay, so let's say that we got our sculpting here. And again, I think you can spend more time on this or less time, however you want to do it. But I just wanted to break with the very smooth cylindrical form here. So back into object mode, let's shade smooth this. And now we have a little bit of more texture to this. So wireframe, still, it might be too much, right? But we'll keep it like this. We won't do any decimation just so we can go through the process. And this is usually, this is the part where I sort of left off at the previous video. So let's talk a little bit about the leaves and all that. And the way I'm gonna do it, there's multiple ways that you can do leaves on a tree. The way I like to do it is with a PNG and planes. I really dislike doing particle system and any of the other methods. I think this method is going to be the lightest on your computer and probably the more control and fastest that you can make it. And so I'm going to go into Photoshop here, and I am going to paint a sort of like a cluster of leaves. Now, you could do this in many different ways. Again, I'm going to select just a couple of brushes here to make, you know, the shape that I want to. Now I don't want to go right to the edge. I want to keep it sort of like in the center here, right? And I'm doing it black right now because I just want to get the general shape. And I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times here. And I'm going to select another one here. Let's see. I'm mostly concentrating on the outer shape, right? I'm not really worried right now about the insides. Maybe something like that. I'm going to add a new layer, clip it to the top, and now I can play with the colors and all that. So I'm gonna do something very similar to the previous to another version that I did before. I'm gonna do a sort of like an orangey greenish sort of color, and one of the things that I'm gonna use is color dynamics. So I'm gonna turn that on, turn on the hue jitter here, and I'm going to add a bunch of color here. Turn that on again. That might be too much. And so again, you could do this however you want to, right? You can play with saturation colors. I don't really want, I don't want to create a like shadows or anything like that. I'm going to get that later. And so I'm not too worried about, you know, making nice forms and doing all that stuff. So I just want to have something that could sort of work here. Maybe something like that. And I can go back to this one here and go add a mask to that. Then I can paint him in the mask sort of places to take off some of that stuff. And let's bring this to black so you can actually see it a little bit better. Now, ultimately, I can merge these two, duplicate one, and then make this one either bigger or smaller here, and then this one making a lower opacity. And again, I think this part here is really up to you, however you want to have the effect of these leaves here. So it's really going to be up to you. But let's just say this is going to be our leaves here. Now, one thing that I probably want to make sure is that once I get, you know, once I'm good with the colors and all that, I'll probably want to do a top layer that maybe has more, like a really clear shape of what the leaves are. And you could do this manually, you could do this with brushes, however you want to do it. But I want to be able that when I look at it, I know that these are leaves. And so I want to make sure that some of this stuff here reads as leaves, right? Maybe something like this. All right. All right. So I'm gonna merge everything here, merge layers, and I'm gonna turn off my back layer. And let's see how this goes. So I'm gonna duplicate this one. So the thing is that with PNGs, you know, all this opacity, we're gonna be able to have it. And so I want to make sure that we have a good balance between opaque areas and transparent areas. So I think this is pretty good. So we'll keep that there. And so now I'm gonna export this as a PNG. So I'm gonna go save copy as computer, and we'll save this as a PNG. So we're gonna save it here. PNG leaves. All right. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, now again, you can go as detailed as you want on this, but this is just showing you the process here. So I'm gonna go back into Blender, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import that PNG as a plane. So Shift A, images as plane, and I'm gonna find that PNG. And then we have it. Now we don't see it because we're not seeing the textures, but if we go into our viewport here, now we're able to see it, right? Just a plane here. Now there's a couple of things that I want to do for the texture. And so I'm going to go into the shader editor and the settings here. And one of the things is under settings, shadow mode, I'm going to go alpha hash. And what it does is the shadow that is going to cast this plane is going to be based also on the opacity. If you don't do that, then this plane is going to cast a plane shadow, and we don't want that. And so we want to make sure that it's going to use the opacity as well. And the other thing is I'm going to turn up the roughness, turn down the specular for now. Okay, now this plane, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode and subdivide it. Maybe once or twice. Something like that. And so now I can actually use this to create my little bundles of leaves. And so I'm gonna duplicate this. I always like keeping a original one just in case. And so now I can go around, rotate this, grab some vertices, turn on proportional editing, and I can really start pushing some of this stuff. And I really just want to play with the layering. And one way I'm going to do it is I'm going to turn on the viewport shading here, and I'm just going to add a light here just so we can actually see it. Something like that. And you can see here on the tree that we're getting that nice dapple lighting here. And so I'm going to shade smooth this, and now I can just really just duplicate this and really play with the shape of this. Let's rotate it. Move that here, make that smaller. Duplicate it again. Now, I don't want to keep the same angle of it, right? So I'm going to play with that angle. And so little by little, I'm sort of playing with the tree here. Now, this doesn't really have a texture right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of improvise here something very quick. So we're just going to create a new one. I could really put anything in here almost. So I'm just going to go into my textures and find something that might work. Again, just to have something doesn't necessarily need to be this. But for example, I can bring this concrete one. And I'm not sure how exactly it's going to work, but just so you guys can see. Now, right now, it looks like a flat color, and that's because there's the UVs are not well. So I'm just going to right click, select everything, press U, Smart UV. And now we have a little something. Now, again, it's not perfect, but it is something that we can work with. Now, the cool thing about this is that I can actually go to the texture and add I could either do a hue and saturation. And now I can play with the color of this, right? Make it purple. It's kind of cool. Play with the saturation, do all this stuff. And the same thing for this one. So if I wanted a darker sort of texture, I can maybe add a RGB curves and then play with I'm gonna turn up roughness, specular down, Just play with that. Yeah, I like this pink color. It's kind of cool. And then now I can really just go to town and all right. So yeah, this is mostly the process. Of course, you know, I'll probably spend more time painting the leaves and getting a better texture for the tree and all that. But you can see how easily, like, I mean, if I look at it from this far away, like, I mean, you can make some really nice control trees and their design. Very, very simple. Another cool trick is that, let's say, for example, I wanted to add snow to this tree in some areas. I'm going to go into edit mode and let's turn on the textures here. Go into polys, and I'm going to select circle here. And I'm going to select the areas that that I want the snow, right? So maybe I want this area here. Maybe I want some of this area here. And again, I could be a little bit more intentional with this, but just to show you here. So a couple here. Let's now grab these. So I have 3 spots here. Let's grab this one too. Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate these polys, so Shift D, and I'm going to right click to place them on the same spot. I'm also going to press P, separate selection. And so now I have these as a separate object from here. And let's go back into texture here. And for these, I'm going to go to the texture here, and we're thinking snow. So we're going to delete this material. And so now it doesn't have any material, and I'm just going to add one. Keep that white. And I'm going to go to the modifiers and add a solidify modifier. And I'm going to move these like so. Right click, chase smooth. And I could do, I could apply this solidify. So I'm going to apply it. And I can really just go into edit mode here. And with the proportional editing, I can move things around if I need to. Right? Chase smooth that. I can add a subdivision surface to make it a little bit smoother. Let's apply that. And for the texture, maybe we can add a little bit of surface and add some warmth to this. Right? And so sort of like a stylized version of this. Very nice shapes there. I can add a little bit of snow to these pieces. All right. Let's see how this looks in cycles. Yeah, very nice. So yeah, so that's the process. Again, each step you can spend a little bit more time and make it look a little bit better. But that's sort of the techniques behind it. All right, guys, so that's it for today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned something new. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions. And again, I'll see you guys in the next video.